our first OT expert panel of the day. The conversation is going to be focused on how manufacturers are strengthening cyber resilience in the face of the fast evolving threats that we've mentioned, and I think we'll hear more about during the day. And it brings together a panel of seasoned cybersecurity professionals from across different manufacturing sectors and across the region as well. And they're going to share their, I guess, hard-won lessons in some cases, actionable next steps, how they're aligning the risk response recovery efforts on the ground. And we will do our best to leave time for Q&A. So without further ado, Claudio, why don't you kick things off and introduce yourself briefly?
Thank you. So my name is Claudio Sangaletti, and I am an Italian by origin, but I was living around Europe and in several places all my life. So I really found myself a European citizen. So I really like this idea of having an EMEA here panel to speak about this kind of things. Today I'm working as a OT leader for the company Medmix. It's a company based in Switzerland. We do application. The company is not a very big enterprise. It is an enterprise, but not very big. That's why I also like it, because it's giving me the opportunity to put this kind of human touch into it, or more human touch than very big corporation that I was used to work with. And yeah, so I'm very happy to be here, and I would like really to share my ideas with all of you.
Perfect, thank you. Josie, over to you.
Hi, I'm Josie Houghton. I'm from Rolls-Royce SMR. I was originally a control systems engineer, and I kind of got into cybersecurity around the time of WannaCry. And moving from there, I somehow ended up in the nuclear industry. So I've been working in the nuclear industry for the past 4 years and looking at all of the different kind of industrial cybersecurity challenges that they come across.
And you're actually in the manufacturing side as well as the nuclear industry.
Yes, yeah.
So, interesting combination. Okay, appreciate that. Andres, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Andres Prieto. I'm from Spain, living in Barcelona. I've been working most likely on the IT world, but since the last 15 years, I moved to the dark side, as the IT guys say, of OT, supporting manufacturing sites and labs. And I've been moving between OT, IT, business, just to provide infrastructure and cybersecurity services for companies. Different type, food and beverage, pharmas, e-commerce, sometimes also. So that's my intro.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Jeba.
Hey, hello everyone. I'm Jeba Renold, based in Leverkusen, Germany. I work with Covestro, manufacturing chemicals, specialty plastics. Probably the chair you're sitting on is product from our company. But anyways, I started my career as automation engineer, participated in research and development of DCS, field device protocols, and then moved on into consulting for cybersecurity. And now here I'm on the other side, on the receiving for as a end user with the manufacturing organizations. And yes, the journey has been from being a control engineer towards implementing controls for cybersecurity. So happy to share my knowledge, and thank you, Jonathan, for this.
Brilliant. So let's get this panel started. I've got a number of questions to shoot out, and feel free, as I mentioned before, to send through some more questions through Q&A. We'll try and get to them. So let's get things moving. The first question to the panel is, what have you learned from a quick and dirty implementation, if you like, that worked better than you expected? So Josie, why don't you kick things off?
Yeah, sure. So when I was working for my previous employer, EDF, we actually were really struggling with asset registers and network diagrams. And in my head, I'd kind of linked the two activities because I thought, well, surely both of them are about what you have. So asset registers are difficult, and I tied the network diagrams to that activity. So I was estimating that discovering all of the assets would take about 2 years. And that was because it was such a difficult operational environment. But then I had a consultant come in and say, are you sure that those have to be tied together? And I looked at him and I was really confused. And I was like, and he said to me, actually, you've already got a network diagram of the DMZ. So all you need to do is talk to the system owners that have systems connected to the DMZ, and you've done the network diagrams. So that's when I realized that actually connecting it to the asset register was completely the wrong approach. And what I thought was going to take about 2 years of effort, it took us about 2 months. So, so it was challenging that assumption that actually activities should be linked together when actually they really shouldn't have been.
Yeah, that's an interesting, definitely an interesting point and a big time saver. Andres, do you have anything to add on that one?
Yeah, no, well, I think one, based on my experience, one thing I learned is that sometimes the quick and dirty stays there forever. And that's one of the risky things, right? That people is quite imaginative, and especially if you're in an incident or you need something, urgent. People bring its magic on those things. Problem is that it works, it stay there, and sometimes it's forever, and then you will never find the gap of fixing it or coming back to it, right? But yeah, I'm aligned with Josie. Sometimes we also have those things. No, you try to link different things and make the ball bigger instead of, hey, hold on, let's go step by step. This part here, the other part there, and chunk into small pieces. That sometimes it help you to move quickly. Dirty, we need to try to avoid as much as possible. But
yeah, good point. Definitely, the quick things tend to stay there after a while. Jeba or Claudio, did you guys want to jump in on this one, or?
I think.
I mean, please go on.
Yeah, I think no, I think one of the quick solutions, I would say, or I wouldn't say dirty, but yes, which is not part of the procedure, have some templates handy. That's what I would quickly pull up. Have some ready-made templates. Some guy is talking to you, hey, I have this project, let me have some assessment. Then, you have some random template you made, which does not fit, doesn't look like a standard company or checklist. But yeah, quick and dirty is also a part of solution, but that's not the end goal, right? So you start quick and dirty, but make it clean and nice later.
Yeah, that's totally the same. I mean, from in this side, I mean, from the Southern Europe, we are famous for this kind of ability to arrange things with some sticky thing around, but it's not the way to leave it. And also Andres was very right in that. The risk is that then it will stay forever, because people, especially in the OT, where you always say don't touch what is working. Then the risk is that it will stay there for 20 years, and after 20 years, someone will come and say, "Oh my God, what do we have here?"
I didn't want to point the Mediterranean way of working, Claudio.
Yeah.
It's all very good points. Let's sort of I guess shift a little bit and focus more on the people for this one, which we mentioned a couple of times already today. So how are you ensuring that teams like engineering teams, operations teams, and other stakeholders are involved in the cyber response, particularly in the recovery planning, something that Sinclair also touched on in the keynote about who actually owns the risk, but who should be involved and how do we integrate that? So, Jeba, why don't you lead off on this one?
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk more on that. See, like I said, I started my career from the automation, moved into consulting, and now when I'm part of a global team, the ballgame is very different. Involving engineering guys and the operation team is not as easy as you think. First you've got to get into their department, speak their language, talk to them, make friends. So how do you translate this? I started involving them in weekly sessions, make them look at their own systems in the perspective cyber team looks at it, not like an automation team. Yes, we definitely need them, but however, it was a slow process where I had to take them, take the benefit of the bond we share, that we are same organization, and then move on, talk about more on what is cyber resilience, how are we planning some recovery methods, and what should be your response. Then they said, hey, we don't have such kind of activity, or we don't have such kind of attacks that we can do something. Okay, let's start with a tabletop activity. Then immediately, you have these consultants come in. We said, no, let's start internally. Let's fail in what we try to do. Then we can address what we failed. So it's not the success we addressed first, but what we failed in our tabletop exercise. So that is the key thing, what we learned. The more we failed in such activities helped us to learn, okay, we are weak here, we are weak there. So those are some weakness. Definitely, I wouldn't reveal those weak points, but yeah, that's how we built it in our organization.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Claudio, do you have a similar or a different sort of take on that?
I mean, it's quite similar, actually. I'm also coming more from the engineering side. So again, from the lighter side, as Andres said, and going now to the dark side. But okay, it's a struggle because, of course, production and the engineers that work in production has a completely different way of seeing things. We all know. They are all only speaking about I should complete my production. So they don't care that much when you are going there with fancy things and saying, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to check this, you have to check that. So I mean, it's for me, what I realized it's that you need to involve people. They have to feel like part of it. If you go there and just say, okay, you have to do it. So if you go from up to down, then it will never work because, okay, they can take it as an order, but they will never be part of it. And for me, what is important, what is really important, is that people became part of what we are doing. A good thing for me that I'm coming from the engineering, also like Jeba, it's that you speak the same language. Yeah, sometimes I also felt that it's really a question of terminology and languages, that it's really making a barrier there, and it's not so easy to make people understand what you really want. And it's also very important that you are clear, very clear in what you want, and that you use the experience of people working in the shop floor. I like this idea of this cyber engineer, let's say, or a cyber knowledge for engineers, let's say, something like it's something like you are capable to give them what they exactly need, not just kind of a pre-chewed IT process, but something that is really into their idea of doing things.
Yeah, good point. It astonishes me often how everyone is so focused on their own particular silo, and they're not even looking often at actually where the revenue is generated and how that sort of helps prioritize the risk. Sometimes those things are way out of their view, but I think it's really important that to align everyone, as you said, they have to find that what's in common. It's not obviously not the technology or the dark side of the light side, but we're all here for a reason, and that's normally to provide value to the customers and obviously create value to shareholders, etc.
Actually, this customer-centric thing, I think it's something that you can use for that. And that's something that you can put in the middle, that it's not me and you. It's we are together doing something for our customers. That's the point.
Indeed. And partners, and did anybody else want to add anything on that one? Otherwise, we will sort of.
I just want to refer the message from Jeba. I think it's important to translate to the same language, no? That OT operators know. There is no doubt about safety, physical safety. They are aware of those kind of things, but cyber, something new, they're coming to them, right? So it's very important to start translating into plain language, get them on it, and slowly it's a maturity path. So slowly they will get more and more involved because they understand more what's about.
Absolutely. Yeah, agreed. And I see some of the comments coming in, agree with you as well. So, okay, so while our focus today is mainly on equipping the practitioners in the audience with sort of short-term wins, we're trying to get them focused on what they can do next. Obviously, not everything can be realistically achieved in a 6-month type of time frame. It's apparently the asset inventory from Josie. But so when we look at longer term efforts, where would you suggest that the longer term efforts on the organization? So what should you be planning for now? Andres, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to understand what your risk appetite of your company, no? Until which risk level do you want to go? You become crazy or you become relaxed? And so that's the first idea. I want to be more or less in this maturity risk level. And from there, you need to have, you know, kind of a roadmap, kind of a program, a plan to go through your different manufacturing sites or whatever and get clear what's are the controls do you want to meet from different standards, ISO, ISC 62443, NIST. Make sure you have all those controls, make sure where you can apply them, and just try to have a clear path to, okay, I want to be more cyber secure on my factories. I will not do it from 0 to 100, even in 6 years, probably, because things evolve. So you need to come back and go through that. So I think it's important to see what I want to be at my risk appetite, also having the sponsorship from upper management, because otherwise you will not get the money, you will not get the time, and you will not get the pressure. And from there, just work on a lot of collaboration with the OT people, get them on board, engage, spend a lot of time on the beginning on that part. And later on, the technical part is what it will fall down quickly if you want it, no? But bring the reticency, bring you know, all those challenges that do not touch the OT. It's like, okay, but you know, you have a standard, you have reference. Try to put the pressure of the cybersecurity accountability on the sites. In most cases, they need to know and understand what's going on and what could happen.
Interesting. Yeah, and it's interesting how sort of like that the technology part often is the easier part, but the people part is often see everybody nodding their head. So, Josie, why don't you do you want to jump in on this one as well?
So at the moment, I'm designing the cybersecurity systems for nuclear power stations. I'm not building and I'm not operating, which means, and because the timescales are so slow in nuclear, it could be, you know, 5-10 years before anything is on grid. So I've got to really think in that, you know, future space of what needs to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. And for me, that one of the bigger worry beads is quantum computing. And, you know, will we be able to trust our encryption by the time we actually build one of these power stations? And it's possible that we won't. And this is the challenge, because although there are post-quantum encryption algorithms at the moment, and, you know, I'm specifying that we should use those, my concern is that they add a lot of latency. And so for a lot of OT applications, they're not actually going to be appropriate. So then it's, what do we do when we can no longer trust encryption? And so I'm building my risk assessment methodology around, well, what can we do if we don't trust the communications anymore? And that's probably my biggest long-term goal at the moment.
Yeah, definitely something to think about. And I guess sometimes we get caught up in the huge stack of goals that we have in front of us, and then by the time we get there, it just joins that huge stack. But
yeah,
it definitely, quantum is definitely something that in the larger sort of cybersecurity space has come to the fore, but often when I speak to practitioners, it's something that's just off there.
Yeah,
Putting it to the
it's a
which-
future problem.
which is exactly both understandable and concerning at the same time. Anybody else? Jeba, did you want to jump in on this one?
I was just thinking on the same lines. What can't be, what can't be, definitely all the projects, what's related to cybersecurity. The moment you talk about cybersecurity to operations and engineering guys, they don't like you. Okay, like what Andres said, the dark side, we are the dark side from both. Even the IT doesn't want us, and the operation and engineering doesn't want us. Okay. However, I try something age-old tradition. I don't know how many of you know the snakes and ladders game. It's a old game. Wherever you try to reach the goal, you get bitten, and that's where I would steal what Josie had to say. Whenever you try to have a goal for your long-term projects, which is definitely not achievable in 6 months' time. However, you start biting smaller challenges, or as a cyber professional, you know, okay, my team is not mature in, for example, user management, or some smaller things which you identify as bigger problems. You start addressing those smaller goals, but with the definite intention of achieving your larger goal. For example, you might want to deploy a solution across your organization, which you cannot achieve within 6 months. But in respect to achieving that longer project, then you definitely have to start addressing smaller ones. But how do you actually do this? We have regular sessions. We have point of contact. Like I said, I made friends with these OT guys from operation team. You pick and choose one from regions, right? And involve them closely in how you look at things, what you found as a problem in their system, not putting it, hey, you are responsible. No, but let them understand, or start sharing reports, which tells them what's their posture. Then it gets a bit easier. I think someone in the chat also put, how do you plan the budget and how do you convince the organization? Yes, convincing the top line is more of a cultural aspect, but still such visibility, you cannot just go put a paper on your desk and say, yes, pay up this money. No, but you should give a holistic or realistic number or picture of what the plant looks. Then you can talk about what you want to achieve. Then the snakes go away a little by little, but still bigger projects to achieve cyber resilience is still not so easily said, because 6 months, you need the downtime. No operation engineer want to shut their plant because you want to change the password, so things like that.
Yeah, I think some really good points. I think particularly the insight about, even if you have longer term sort of goals and plans, to break them down into shorter, quicker wins. I think I've seen it as well with our clients, industrial enterprises, where they try to take on too much and they never get to the end of the project, and it collapses because they don't have the wins at the smaller stages. And I think it's incredibly important both to build trust, as you said, with the stakeholders and also with management. Build trust, show the win in terms of what do we contribute to the organization, and obviously security and the operations and the other teams as well. So that's very, very important. So let's take another sidestep and look at resilience. And I think it's a term that keeps coming up. We tackled it in our first event as well. But how are you building cyber resilience, but also while maintaining that uptime and operational continuity? So it sounds like a strange question because it's sort of one inside the other. But to create cyber resilience, sometimes there's interruptions involved, and how can you interrupt if you're focused on maintaining that uptime and continuity, and how do you align that, I think, is also the question. So Andres, why don't are you good to take this one?
Yeah. So I think it's important to prioritize what are the different controls you apply to make resilient your cybersecurity. And based on those, you could identify, and based on the risk assessment, you can identify, okay, I can apply those without putting in risk or stopping the operations, as Jeba mentioned. No, you cannot stop them. So you just prioritize what you can do, what you cannot do. There is a lot of controls that will increase your resiliency without any touching, the environment. It could be SOPs, it could be documentation, it could be the asset inventory that Josie was mentioned, not knowing what you have there and keep them updated. So there are a lot of things that it could bring there. Then you move probably more to the backup thing. You have your backup already there. It might not, you don't need to take them, but just identify where you have your backup, where it's safe. Do you have those restore part, and just keep growing on those levels. And when there is a downtime, because we need a downtime, a maintenance window, factories also need it for, hump, energy, cleanup, all those kind of things. That's the time where you apply those activities. So when there is a downtime, that you cannot do it otherwise. It's always a challenge. It's always a risky thing, because even during those downtimes, you need to fight with electricians, mechanic, vendors, power. So it's tight to get the slot where you can do those things. But that's where you need to, start moving. So whatever you can do without shutdown, put it there, be ready. And then when you have the window, do it.
Yeah. In fact, there's a question that came through the Q&A, which is very similar as well on this topic. So the question was posed, how have you adopted any approaches from process safety, which is something that Sinclair talked about, or business continuity planning, right? There's the whole sort of overarching enterprise cyber risk to improve the cyber resilience. So I know, Jeba, do you want to jump in on the original question or the additional part of that?
Yeah, I think both. I think I'll try to address, let's see how well I can do that. Well, for the resilience part, when I joined this organization new, and like I said, this is my first role being as an end user. So I cannot be a consultant and talk things which I'm not going to be responsible of. And I'm part of the organization. So the first thing I had to do was first figure out what's actually happening in the organization and do an internal study. It's not just you build a nice cyber program, very beautiful documents, hand it to operation guys and say, hey, here's a cybersecurity manual. This is for the organization. Let's start following it to the dot. No, that doesn't work. That definitely doesn't work. So what I had to do, first I coined this terminology, design, discuss, and monitor. Okay. So what is a different phased approach is a very good solution. So what is running, let's not use the same terminology as operation guys. What's running, don't disturb it. Let's talk to them. That's where the discussion comes. Design is what upgrade projects, new projects, what's forward thinking. For example, like what Josie had to say, you have AI now talking, everybody wants AI. So the future designs have to be at a very early stage. Let's address it at a very early stage. Then what's already somewhere during implementation or what's somewhere part of discussion, then you want to monitor those. So all these three different buckets help you to address a complete holistic solution. Still not compromising on cybersecurity standards, what we have, but you will have to cater to individual aspects. Though it's one organization, you have to treat them differently so that you can achieve at least a little resilience what we are trying to mature as. As an organization, yes, vendors also supply and give you a good solution. However, you will have to realistically check. I don't know if most of you followed the keynote, you have the risk. You will have to look into what kind of risk you want to address. So it's not just one golden bullet. That's the difference IT and OT has. So you can never use, one golden bullet and mature solutions. So your approach should be very strategic on how do you want to address what kind of risk and at what stage it is. So it's little beyond looking beyond somebody's shoulder to understand And that's how I think that partly answers the question as well. I'm not sure if it's clear.
Yeah, I think that the key message also is that it's always more complex and more complicated, infinitely more complicated on the OT and industrial side for various reasons. One of the areas that we do see interest around are like threat simulations and particularly tabletop exercises. Is that something that you think can help close real gaps? And if so, what does that look like? Andres, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'm sure. So yeah, I mean, threat simulation, pen testing simulation, and tabletop exercise are, in my opinion, are key, especially to keep, your cybersecurity resiliency and level at position, because there are new threats coming in, there are changes on your environment that they might affect, the contours that you might want or you might have there, and you think you are safe, but you are not. Challenging thing is that you cannot do them in the same way as you typically do in the IT on the OT space, right? It's not like, let's go for free, let's do that one. It's true that there are some platforms already there into the market that they simulate it on their end based on the information that you gather from your OT environment, right? So it's easier to simulate an attack or a vector attack or whatever with real data, but not touching your environment, right? So if you are able to be mature enough to get that connectivity to those systems almost in real time, just passing the information that you might have from your firewall, from your vulnerability scanning, from your IDS, IPS solutions, that help you a lot, especially to keep you, on the security level, because there are a lot of changes coming, there are a lot of things coming, there are a lot of vulnerabilities coming, and you cannot say set up this and it's there forever and it will stay forever safe, right? I think that's one of the challenges that Josie mentioned, that she has is like, and she doesn't even know what's going to be in 5 years. So imagine the challenge we have it now from month to month or from week to week. Imagine in 5 years. So I think it's good to make those. I think it's good to do them a proactive way, and there are tools there that might help us to be more in line.
Yeah, and there's actually another question in the panel about sharing an example of how a tabletop exercise exposed a blind spot in your response plan. And what I'm really interested in, maybe Claudio, you can help us out here. What does it look like in a smaller company? So is this still doable? Because we see, in large companies, these big exercises where everybody comes in once a year, or I'm not sure about once a quarter, but definitely once a year. Is that achievable? What's the scale? What does it look like? And are there what are the benefits even when it's a smaller sort of environment? Claudio,
I mean, of course, it's much more complicated when you are in a smaller environment because, first of all, because of resources, because you don't have the same number of people there that can work on it. And when we're speaking about manufacturing area or OT area, then you have to consider also that people, you have to make people free from their work. And if your organization is a small one and you're working in 3 shifts and people are working all the day, then it's really becoming very difficult to get persons on board to be capable to do this kind of things. Lately I'm looking a lot into tools like Andres was mentioning that really allow you to do some kind of digital twin. Let's call it like that. And it's helping you a lot because then you can go more or less online. So let's say you don't have to take a very specific range of time from the machine, but you can do it more or less when you want, but still complicated, still very complicated. It has a lot of good impact from my point of view. It's really very good. What I'm planning to do, and it's something that I've learned from another conference, I'm planning to do a tabletop exercise with the Hexacom. Because for me, it's a very, very good opportunity to make them really understand what it is about. And it's also maybe connected with some question that you had from the audience about how can you get budget for for your cybersecurity program. And then when you go into this kind of thing with the Execom, then they come to realize exactly what is the risk. So what is the thing that the company is losing if we are not going into that protection? So I find this idea amusing. I'm still trying to convince our Execom to participate in a short time, but yeah, if I do it, then I will let know the community how it's working.
So you don't have an answer yet for how to
Not yet.
specifically justify, but well, what about sort of the key sort of metrics or KPIs? So are there KPIs that you have or have introduced lately that sort of help at least demonstrate the methodology and the progress to leadership in your company?
Yeah. I mean, it's for us, it's I mean, it's very complicated, honestly, because it's kind of demonstrated something that it's most of the time intangible. So how can you demonstrate, let's say, electricity? Okay, you have to touch it. So unfortunately, most of the time you are capable to demonstrate something when something wrong is happening. Yeah, this was happening to me a lot of time in the past. So you really start doing things when there is a problem, and then you decide, okay, it's time to do something because something was happening. But nevertheless, lately I was trying to use this kind of KPI because I think visibility is still one of the most important topics, and it's difficult to achieve. So for me, what I'm trying to do is to show how many visible devices do we have into the OT environment. This is something that I'm trying now with my OT program in Medmix, and it looks not bad because it's also activating some kind of competition between the different units into the company, because of course they want to be also the one that is doing better than the other, and it's kind of helping you in get the ball moving. Yeah. So that is one of the things that we are checking at the moment. And of course, the other one, a classical one, it's the patching of the Windows devices. Yeah, so that is something that we always take into consideration, the percentage of patched devices into the Windows environment, let's say.
It seems like everybody's answers are very much like the classic consultant, because the answer always starts with, well, it depends. But it's always the case in this environment because it's so complex. And that actually reminded me of a point that I was going to bring up when Jeba was talking, that one of the clients that we work with it's actually in Latin America, but they have this OT security champions program. So what they do is they go out to the plants and they incentivize the I guess it's the light side. If we're the dark side, they incentivize the operations folks to learn about cybersecurity and take that risk into that environment. But they look for champions and they offer them, I guess it's training and some sort of accreditation on 62243 or something like that to say, okay, you're going to be the cyber champion in that particular plant, and that works really well. Both with regards to what Jeba was referring to, but also, as you said, this sort of gamification might work around each site, and maybe the champions have their own sort of KPIs, and they're pushing it, and they can pull their teams along with them and create that visibility, and that might be a good option as well. Josie, what's your sort of take on this?
Yeah, so I mean, actually, I really like the point about cyber champions. And certainly my experience of creating kind of a similar network of cyber champions is that, you know, most control systems engineers, if you explain to them what cybersecurity risk is, if you explain to them why their system is vulnerable, then the next time they design a system, they'll go, I understand now. and they'll start incorporating security into their design. So that idea of having those cyber champions that are just spreading the word, it makes a huge difference over time. But kind of coming back to the question about metrics and KPIs, for me, the most important thing is honesty, right? If you're presenting a RAG status, a red, amber, green status to senior leadership, don't present a green when things are going wrong, and don't present a red when actually it's within your power to fix the problem. And the more honest you are, the more senior leadership will listen to you. Because if you're wrongly reporting greens, then ultimately that risk is going to come up and bite them. And if you're wrongly reporting reds, then ultimately you're not going to get the help that you need, because it's like the boy who cried wolf. If you start reporting reds when actually nothing's wrong, then they will stop responding.
Yeah, it's a fine balancing point. I guess it's a matter of also understanding your leadership and organization. What we also see that some of the more effective clients that we work with, that they develop a messaging board, if you like, which is something that comes out of the communication space, but a messaging board for each different stakeholder. And obviously your management team's one, but operations, engineering, and finance, or so you can talk, and I think this was brought up before, talk in terms of their language and then the value to the company. And particularly coming back to the KPIs that you were talking about, you said be honest with yourself and with them will help also yourself and your team also. Because it's very easy to lose your team if you're saying one thing up there and one thing there. So yeah, very
Absolutely.
good points.
Yeah.
We're getting close to the end. I think we have time for a couple more questions, hopefully. So this one I think would be particularly interesting. Foundational controls. I think we hear a lot about those in the industry, but if you're going to give practitioners here some advice on choose one foundational control that the organizations here should prioritize if they haven't done it already in the next 6 months. So what would they choose next to do and why? So Jeba, would you like to try that one?
Yeah, that's quite interesting to double down on one control. But I would speak from my experience. Okay, one thing we did is foundationally specialize in communication, inter-department or inter-team communications. Okay, what does that mean? We would take time to participate as a cyber team, right? As a cyber engineer, I would take time to participate in operational meetings. Need not be every day or regularly, once in a while. You participate in their meetings to understand, hey, what are these guys talking? What do they do, right? Second, ask them, like the cyber champion, or what we call the point of contact. Yeah. So you can pick one guy, make him feel special that he knows something about cybersecurity, take him into confidence and ask him, or have sessions, regular sessions for this, and build a community. Then you have quarterly community meetings. So this is a communication channel established. Then what we do also, part of the communication is walk downs in the plant. I at least do quite often physical meetings and walk downs, not to showcase something, but just to have that personal touch, which helps in what I see from a cyber perspective and what they have to speak from operational. Unless you build this first initial steps, it's difficult to implement technology achievements in organizations. I mean, that's at least my personal take. Others can differ, but this is the first thing I established when I joined this organization. I had to have these communication channels. Yes, learning German definitely was part of that. I'm still not an expert, but that's how it starts. That's how you have to do. Learn the language, speak the language, not just the OT language, but also the local language. But try to be culturally meaning cyber culture into the company. Unless you do that, you, like what Josie just said, unless you tell them, you explain to them why do you want to change the password from 3 characters to 16 characters, why, that until you do that, they won't listen to you. So please, so this is what I would say would be a very, very powerful tool to use. Worked for me.
Danke.
That-
Did I get that right?
Danke.
That's the extent
Yeah.
of my German, so I'll stop there. But I think it's interesting that out of all the sort of foundational controls that might be out there, that you chose the more sort of human side, and that again, it goes back to, I think, the fact that building trust and, like you said, communications, and taking the time to both or what is it, listen first, and then seek first to be understood, and then to understand and then to be understood is critical. So it's about communicating and building trust with those various different stakeholders with different worldviews is incredibly important. Claudio, what's your experience in that? I guess you don't need the German, but
no, and apart from the journal learning, that it was also for me, because I was working nearly 7 years in Hanover. So that's really something that it's getting you near to people. But I basically totally agree with Jeba. It's for me, I call it awareness. Yeah. So for me, the foundation for every security program, especially in OT, it's awareness. So people has to understand what we are talking about, what it is that we want to do, what is the language, what is the way of speaking. So sometimes I'm really kind of thinking about how are we not capable to make this something that people has into the DNA. So at the big, if you think about, I always do this kind of example. If you think about when you go into the car and you put your car belt, yeah, you don't have to think about it. You don't. No one normally, people doesn't have to come and say to you, and remember, you have to put the belt. It was like that at the beginning. If you think about, in Italy, we even had some guys that were doing some T-shirt with the belt painted into it just to escape the police control. But yeah, for me, awareness, it's about that. It's about making this cultural shift, yeah, to make really a change into the mindset of the people, that they realize that it's not something optional. It's not something that you can just say, okay, I will do it if I have time. No, it is something that is here to stay. We have a very long future in front. We don't know what will happen. It will be probably worst. So like Andres and Josie said, okay, I mean, what will happen in 1 year, in 5 years, in 10 years? So really build this awareness, this foundation of mentality into people. For me, it's really the most important thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I just want to add that it's not all doom and gloom. The fact that we're all here talking about this is a big step from where we started. So I think that there's always hope. So I think we literally have 2 minutes left for a very, very quick question, but I think it's a very pertinent one. So it's what's one key lesson that you have learned from a recent cyber incident that may have shaped your cybersecurity strategy or process? And Josie, I'm going to throw this one to you. We have about 2 minutes.
All right.
It's all yours.
It's going to be a fast one. So the last kind of actual OT cyber incident that I dealt with, and I'm going to say this, it turned out to be absolutely nothing. It was a storm in a teacup, but we were sufficiently worried about it when we opened the incident that we stood up both the emergency response team and the IT incident response team. And it was the first time they'd ever worked together. We hadn't had any exercises where we brought those two teams together. And for considering that this was the first time they'd worked together, we absolutely lost all sense of command and control in the incident. And, losing command and control during an incident is absolutely the worst thing that can happen. Grand scheme of things, we pulled through. And we managed it. But but that to me was one of the key takeaways, that there was a misunderstanding of what were the roles and responsibilities during an incident. And those could have easily have been nailed down before we had an incident. And, you know, that was really the key lesson learned from that.
And you sort of brought that back into your planning, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. So that became a tabletop exercise. So literally straight after the incident, we had a hot wash where we brought in all of the emergency controllers, including the ones that weren't on that incident, and we said, right, this is what happened, this is everything we learned. And that information sharing means that the next time there's an incident where we have to stand up that emergency response team, they will know what to do. And they'll know who to talk to, they'll know the right people, they'll know all of the things that went wrong. So it puts us in a much stronger position. And you know, that is definitely a lesson that I've brought forward from that. Make sure that people know what their responsibilities are in an incident.
Fantastic. And you did a great job squeezing it into the 2 minutes. We're out of time. I want to thank you all. It's been amazing, fantastic panel. So thank you all to the panel members. The insights and sharing your knowledge and experience was amazing. Thank you so much.